Welcome to ITS 362. I'm waiting. Usually it takes a minute or two for everyone to get in the session. So, today's lab for ITS 362, which basically means we're going to continue our examples of just using JavaScript. Okay, so remember, this is still part of the review. Basically, next week we kind of start the new material. Okay, so on Tuesday we went over the lecture, right? We went over the lecture and we went over some examples. So today I'm going to go ahead and open up Notepad++ again. I'm going to open up a file, JavaScript Basics. So go ahead and create a new document and call it, let's just call it forin.html. Forin, it'll be examples, obviously, of for loops.
Would we be saving this file in the same folder as the last time?
Yeah, just keep a folder, just save all your files together.
Also, I'm not sure if you're sharing your screen, but I don't see anything at least.
Check if I'm recording. So I'm recording. Volume is, microphone's on, and then share screen. Notepad. Okay, so you should now be seeing Notepad++. I haven't written anything. So you can just create a file, get into it's your workflow, right? So you guys will develop a workflow. And then please, I've noticed that there's always a few students coming in late. So I'm going to do the course participation a little later today. Please remind me, because the problem is I'll forget if you can. Okay, so in a few minutes, we'll do that once everyone comes in. All right, so so we're going to do just examples today. And then if we have time left, we're just going to leave it to open lab time so that you guys can work on the homework. I'll go over the homework again and then just practice, ask questions or just work on it. All right, so on Tuesday, we did strings, a strings example, just pretty straightforward, how to create variable strings and then how the pipeline works for our approach. So we did that one, strings. And then after that, we did an example of text boxes. All right, great. So we got a few values from text boxes, and then we dynamically move those into our code, and then perform some kind of calculation there. So we've done that one as well, I believe. So then today we're going to do a for loop example, but as you might anticipate, it's going to be pretty consistent with everything else or the basic mechanism that we've been using. So let's go ahead, as I said, this class is going to be like that. It's very much, do the work, everything from scratch. Okay, so add, these tags you're going to add every single time. So we can use indentation. Right, head section, and then the body section as usual. And that's just, our standard workflow approach. All right, so the things we're going to use again, we're going to use, for now, everything, the event is really on load, right? But obviously, we've seen that we can use other things, and we're going to start working those, incorporating those, as we do the work. So let's create a function here, startup. It's just, basically the function that initializes everything before we run our code. All right, so I'm going to do onload, startup, and then, again, just any kind of a tag in here. Key thing is we need to have an ID so that we can reference it. because that's the whole point of this, right? So that's, as I said, that's why where jQuery gets its name. You do a query of things by their IDs, you grab the object, and then you modify. And that's pretty much the entire pipeline this semester. So, you know, we take this approach, and there we go. We've got now our placeholder, if you want to call it that. And now comes where the code usually, so this is just the normal skeleton. And then eventually we get into the code, right? So this is where you will always have to do your coding. So we're going to take, you know, create a function. In this case, the function is called startup. I'm going to say startup. Over here, we take the jQuery formatting approach, and our function is ready to go.
Excuse me.
Okay, go ahead, please, sir.
Aren't the functions supposed to be under the script tag?
Oh, that's right. So good catch, right? So I missed, and that's why the highlighting looked strange, right? So I knew there was something odd looking, and it's the fact that, yeah, we want to put these in the script. All right, so, all right, there we go, good. So now we've got our function there, ready to go. We've got our script tags in there. And now just comes the basic thing. So what do we want to do? You know, in this example, as you saw in the slides, I talked about arrays and I talked about for loops. And so that's really what we're going to practice. Just do a simple example in the class of this one. So I'm going to create, let's call it work days. All right, so work days. And then we're going to have just some work days in here. So Monday, and then Tuesday, and then Wednesday, and then, you know, Thursday and Friday. All right, so we've got five elements in this array. And now what we want to do is, you know, we want to display them in some way, but we also want to show an example of how to iterate, right? So in our example, what we're going to do is we're going to take the elements in the array, we're going to concatenate them to create a string, and then we're going to display the string, okay? So that's going to be our approach. And we're going to make one very powerful thing that we can do sometimes is that we can mix tags with variables in the JavaScript code. So that will be the approach. Okay, so so let's do that then. Let's so we need a variable, right? So we need a variable. We're going to call, you know, you can call this whatever you want, result, for instance, right? And we're going to initialize this to nothing for now, but we're going to add things to this string. That's our goal, right? And however, it's not just a string. It's actually HTML code. So that means we're going to mix HTML tags with the actual values here. And that's yet another new element that is going to be done throughout the semester. When we do the work in PHP, PHP also does that, where, you know, it runs logic code. It grabs the PHP variables and the values, but it's also creating, using HTML tags to finally create some table or something, right? So all of that is done dynamically. And this is basically our first example of creating a complex HTML piece of information dynamically, right? So we're going to do that. So so you'll see it's pretty straightforward, actually. So let's do a for, right? A for loop in there. And then we're going to say, you know, so the way that this can work in JavaScript is like this. So we say var workday. If you look at it, it's a little bit similar to how you do this in Python. So workday and workdays, right? So we declare the variable there, and then we do a loop of for workday and workdays. So now workday, every iteration will contain Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on. So now that I've done this, right? Now that I've done this, I can add, my curly bracket here, right? And then I'm gonna say result, which is the variable where I'm concatenating things. Oops. And I'm gonna use the plus to concatenate. And now I'm gonna say, well, I wanna add workdays, workday, right? So I just want to add workday in there, plus maybe like, let's say just some symbol, let's say a colon, and then plus, and then here's the trick now. Look, I'm going to add an actual tag. So in this case, it's going to be the break line tag. So this will allow me to display the 1 day per line. So it's like I'm adding enter, if you want to think of it that way. Okay, and so now I've mixed together HTML code with values in my variables, my string. If everything looks correct here, it should be result is equal to the previous result plus workday plus some kind of a character just plus the tag, right? And then at the end, all of that from the for loop is stored in the result variable. Okay? And then now we want to see it. So let's do the same thing we've been doing from Tuesday. Create label message, just some variable, right? Some variable. We're going to use, for now, we're just using document dot get element by ID. All right, so we're going to do that. Save this. Okay. Hit semicolon, and then the element that I'm going to grab, obviously, is the one I named message. So there you go, message. And then once I have the element, I'm just going to assign to that element, to this span, basically, I'm going to add the result. Whatever's in result, I'm going to add to it. So I'm just going to say here, label message dot inner HTML, and we assign to it result. So if we haven't made any errors, hopefully this will work. So go ahead and run this on your own screen and see what you get. Okay, so I'm gonna saving it. Now I'm going to run this. I'm gonna have to share that screen. Right, and if you look, you should now be seeing the output from the browser, on the browser, and you can see it took the value, right? Whatever is the value in the array. So the index, workday. Okay, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5. We know at least there are 5 elements in the array, so we know that's working correctly. However, it hasn't added the day yet, so we need to work on that. But otherwise, it worked, right? Are there any questions so far?
No questions.
None that I can think of.
Okay, so now I ask you guys the following question. Let's go back to Notepad. How do you solve the problem, right? So, I showed the number, but what I need to show is I want to show the actual word. So I want to show it after the colon, for instance. So what would you guys suggest? What change could we make to the code?
You said after the colon?
Yeah, somewhere
Yeah.
after. You show the number, colon, the word.
You would just need to include the variable work days and then in brackets have work day. So that way it iterates through the array.
Perfect. Exactly. Very good. So let's go ahead and add the concatenate here, right, for the break line. And then now we can go ahead and do exactly that. Let's take the arrays, work days, right? And then in square brackets, we're going to plug in work day, which seems to be an index. So work day. And that way, we should be able to retrieve this variable if this worked correctly. So now I'm going to hit save. Okay, you saw that in the notepad. I'm going to now refresh the page. You can refresh it on your own computer. And now I'm going to share, and you can see in the HTML that I have now successfully added the words to the numbers, and it works. So now you have an example of how to use functions, how to use for loops, how to use arrays in JavaScript, and also how to mix code, JavaScript code with variables and HTML tags to create a more dynamic output of your HTML. So that's four very important concepts basically that you will use throughout the semester. Okay. Any questions? All right, so it seems like that was pretty clear. So today, I just have a few more examples. I don't have that many things. And then, as I said, we'll go over the homework. And this is a very easy homework, okay? Very easy. The first 2 weeks this semester, are meant to be pretty easy. As I said, they're technically a review. Next week, we will start with something a little bit more heavy, which is going to be, as you know, jQuery is highly object-oriented. And so we're going to look at object-oriented programming in JavaScript itself. As you know, the slides are already posted, so you can start reading through that material for next week over the weekend. You have, before I forget, you have a homework assignment due tonight, the HTML, CSS, so don't forget to submit that. This homework too, the JavaScript part of the grade calculator, will be due a week from today. Yes. And so that's next week is the object-oriented programming. Today, we're going to look at just a few more things. Let me think. Right, so today we're going to look at an example of another example of arrays. Basically, we're going to do another example of arrays similar to that one. And then we're going to look at a drop down. The drop down will be a slightly more complex problem. Not meant to be super complex, but it'll just show how we can create objects that link other objects, okay? Objects that link other objects. So I'm going to switch back to the code now. I'm going to leave it there for a few seconds. I am recording all of this, so make sure you watch that video. Okay, so before I forget, also, I'm going to do the course participation. So let me just take a picture of that. All right. So I think this is due tomorrow, so or next week. Okay, so let me. All right. Okay, so I have that. All right, let's go ahead and do another example then. I've done the course participation, so I'm going to close this file, and I'm going to do another example. So go ahead in your folder, in the folder that you have, create yet another file, another HTML. Let's call this one just arrays. This one's arrays. So arrays.htm. Okay, so if I share my folder, you can see I have now another file, arrays.htm. So go ahead and just open Notepad++ on this. Okay, so now I'm going to share this new one. I'm going to go to the HTML code here. All right, so let's go ahead and add the code. HTML, you know, the same code as always. HTML. You know, add the head section. And add the body section. Oops. All right, now that we've done that, basically, let me just, so the goal of this will be to have, you know, some arrays and kind of play with them and then display them pretty much on the label message. So this time around, I'm not going to put in everything else. I'm just going to give you the function, okay? And then I'm going to let you guys fill in the rest. I'm going to give you some minutes and just make it work, okay? So this time I'm giving you just a function so that you can practice a bit more. I'm gonna take a few minutes there. So, but I'll give you I'll just describe the function and you should be able to figure out the rest. So basically the idea is, you know, I have my function. Let's call it startup again. That's really the only event we're using. Okay, and then in here then I'm gonna have an array, var. I'm gonna call it empty array. I'm going to initialize it, right? You know, if I want to add a comment, I can say an empty array. Okay. Then we can add another array, var, called this one, you know, similar to the previous one, workdays. Okay, and this is, you know, very similar. You guys can fill in the rest. Just gonna do, you know, similar Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on. So you guys can complete the rest. All right. Now in this example, we want to populate. Basically, we're going to populate the empty. All right. So that's our goal. For this, we're going to have, you know, variable var I and the common result one, right? We can initialize result to blank again. And I obviously some kind of an index. Because, you know, we saw how to do the for loop in the previous fashion. This time we're going to take the more traditional for loop approach, like you learn in your C++ programs. You know, our standard I equals 0, right? That we're all familiar with. I equals 0. From I to, now we want to iterate through workdays, right? But we could hard code the number, but a more efficient way of getting that would be to say workdays dot length. Okay, that gives us the length of the array, and that's, you know, that would be a little bit nicer. Workdays dot length, and then, you know, the traditional I++. Okay, so we do this for loop here. Okay, and now we can specify what we want to do. So in this case, let's see, we want to, what do we want to do? We want to add something to empty array. So let's say as we iterate through the work days, we want to add something in empty arrays. So we do push, and then that's the question is what, right? What do we add? So we need to think about that. We can add I, given that we're iterating through that. So we can add I, we can modify it. So I is 0, 1, 2, but we can modify it, just give it a value. So 100 plus, right? So that just makes it 101, 102, and so on. All right, so now that we have that, just playing with the arrays, there's no reason why I'm doing this. Just more than anything, just practicing. Let's do sort of the same thing. Now we want to iterate through the empty array, similar way. I'm going to do for I equals 0, right? And then I less than empty array. So notice I'm iterating through the other array. Dot length.
Is this a nested nested?
Not nested, no. They're two separate for loops. It's a good question. They're not nested. They're, oh, I see what you're saying. So yeah. Good catch. There you go.
Your mic is doing the thing.
Is my mic doing the thing? Okay. Yes, I will fix that. Is that better now?
It sounded a little bad at first, but then sounded better.
Usually this fixes it. I just have to adjust there. How about now?
It's still kind of messing up.
Nothing.
Not yet.
Still sound like Megatron.
A little bit, yeah.
That's funny. Okay. Still nothing. Still.
It's not as awful, but you can still hear it.
You know that this. I know the problem, and you guys, you've been in classes where this fixes it, but. I'm using the microphone that comes with my laptop, the one I've always used for the classes. Okay. All right. maybe if I just restart this session. So let's do that. I'm gonna have to. So that means there's gonna be 2 videos today. Okay. Let me try that.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good.
So I'm gonna end this one and start it again.